Now then, it was her role in the Forsyte Saga which made actress Susan Hampshire a household name. But the role of her lifetime has taken place behind closed doors, becoming a long-standing campaigner for assisted dying after watching her sisters, parents and husband all die slow, painful deaths. Susan has called for an urgent review of assisted dying, which is, of course, illegal in the UK, asking MPs to rewrite the law following a year-long inquiry.
And yet former Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries has a different take. Her husband died from bowel cancer in 2019 after being given just 4 months to live. He initially wanted to go to Dignitas, the assisted dying clinic in Switzerland, but he didn't qualify for that. And in the end, he died at home peacefully, surrounded by his family. And they both join us now. Nadine, what made your husband not qualify for Dignitas? And had he wanted to, would you have supported him, even though it obviously isn't something you agree with?
So I think this is a very complex issue and every single case is different. So I'm not saying Paul's experience is the experience that everybody has. But he was panicked because his father died of bowel cancer in absolutely excruciating agony. And his words were that I don't want to put you and the girls through, our daughters, through what my mum went through. But, of course, his father died in the 1960s. And today, pain relief is very sophisticated and it is a rare case today where a very rare case indeed, where someone dying with bowel cancer would die in pain. And the other thing was that he timed out. If you get a diagnosis, Dignitas, you have to register with Dignitas. They like you to renew your registration each year. I think you need at least 6 months with Dignitas to go through the process, and quite rightly so, because this is an organisation which is taking your life by giving you a drug. You take the drug, but they are facilitating that. And so there is a huge process and hoops to jump through. And Paul didn't qualify because he only had 4 months. I could not even discuss it with him. That burden fell upon my 3 daughters, who were adults, young adults. And those conversations between them and him, because I found myself getting too upset to discuss it with him. And so they made the phone calls, they did the investigations for him. But what he did do was he refused the chemotherapy, which would have given him those extra months. And as it was, I discussed this with my youngest daughter last night, the loveliest death. He had, at the end, he described the 4 months. He died 4 months to the day of his 4-month diagnosis. He described it as the best 4 months of his life. Wow. And he died absolutely peacefully and pain-free. And all of his fears they just didn't materialise. And
you feel, had he been given an alternative option, the alternative option he was looking at, you would have never have had that time, you would have never had that opportunity to say farewell in such a peaceful, wonderful, loving
No, and I believe at the end he regretted not having refused the chemotherapy. He was told the chemotherapy could give him weeks or months, and I think towards the end he really regretted that he hadn't taken the chemotherapy.
So, Susan, when you hear Nadine talk about what a powerful and important period of life it was for her husband, and you compare that to what you went through with your sisters and your husband.
I thought, by the way, you wrote the most beautiful piece in the Mail. It was really moving and very lovely. But we are on different sides of the fence in a way. Yeah. I'm the oldest person in this building, so I have known my parents, my auntie, my mother-in-law, all have the most appalling deaths. Then Eddie was different. I looked after him for 14 years. But when it came to my 2 sisters, they were very vocal about what they wanted. And one sister I'd been discussing it with for a long time, and she kept saying, if only there was a pill, if only there was a pill. And at the end, she actually stopped eating or taking any water, and ultimately she died because she'd come out of hospital and she knew she wasn't going to get better. And the next sister was actually worse because she was in desperate pain. Both of them had lived healthy lives till they were 94, and a fall into hospital, and then they come out. And I can only say the nurses, the district nurses were wonderful. Everybody was wonderful. I'm not complaining about anything. All I'm saying is somebody's life, when they say to you so often, please help me to go, just let me skip this, because I can't stand it any longer. And then the voice gets tinier and tinier. Just you know, asking for help and you can do nothing.
No, you can
do nothing. It's against the law. And therefore, I do feel, you know, if you can get people to the moon, surely lawyers and doctors can work out a system which is safe for people who... It's about choice. Your husband maybe did not want it, or you didn't want it for him. My sisters wanted it. Why should they not have a choice about their life?
Nadine, you've worked in government. You've been front line of trying to legislate rules and laws. Why is it so complicated? Because when you hear Susan talk so passionately and emotionally about it, and you can hear what her sisters went through, it seems like a very easy step to say, of course, we want to be able to facilitate what it is that they need in there as they're dying.
Well, there are a myriad of reasons, and it is a very complex issue. But, you know, there is something...
And also there's religion, isn't there, as well?
Well,
yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure that wholly comes into this when you're legislating.
Okay.
But there is something that Susan and I have in common, and that is Susan's sisters and my husband, Paul, and actually my friend 5 years previously, who also died of bowel cancer. They had something in common. They had us, and they could talk to us, and we looked after them. Susan gave up her career to look after her loved ones. But for many, many, many people in the UK, many lonely people, many elderly people, they don't have family. Their next of kin is the state. It is not a person like us. And when we are legislating for assisted dying, well, one of the things, just one of the many factors we have to bear in mind is the fact that the state will be the people they talk to. They'll be talking to the state who manage their budgets, who look after their care.
What would happen if they did a living will, or if they had power of attorney from one member of their family? Would that make the situation any better?
I'm talking about people who don't have family, who are dependent on the NHS or on the care system
the doctor
as their
does
next
the living
of
will.
kin.
The doctor does that, doesn't he?
Well,
Is
that's
your concern
again,
then, Nadine, that
in
those
terms
people
of
that
legislation,
don't have somebody like your family members,
No, I have
that
a-
if budgets are an issue, they could be persuaded to take that choice, to take the assisted dying choice, because actually the motivation to do it from the state's perspective is, you know what, you can hold on for another 6 months, or you could make that choice now, and the motivation wouldn't necessarily come from the right place. It might be more budgetary driven rather than best standard of living. Is that your concern?
Well, distilling down to one of my points, and there are a number of them, but just let me give you the example of somebody that I've spoken to who is a lady who is 90, who is not terribly well, is wheelchair bound, is in an institution, and that institution is responsible for her care. She's in a care home. And her words are that every day is filled with joy. She has a bird feeder outside the doors of her room. She feeds the birds, she watches the birds, and she says that gives her immense joy. She actually gets upset when the food runs out. She gets anxious about it being topped up. She gets immense joy from the bird feeder and watching the birds. And she has a stepdaughter who she loves very much. And she is protected by the law. The law has its arms around her shoulders. She feels no obligation to ask to end her life and to, in her words, no longer be a burden. Yeah. If the law changes tomorrow, there are many people who won't want to inconvenience their family, who won't want to put their family through expense, who will feel suddenly the weight of an obligation, even though they get joy from each day, to end their own life.
And also, I mean, obviously this has been done in Canada. You know, assisted dying. It's called the medical assistance in death. There's a full system. I mean, I think it's the country that has most of medically assisted deaths in the whole world is Canada. There are 2 points here, isn't it? That one is, Susan, I put to you, is that, you know, isn't the issue more about how we give pain-free, comfortable death to people in this country? Because Marie Curie say that currently 1 in 4 people, actually, not the same as you said, Nadine, that it's rare. Actually, Marie Curie say 1 in 4 people in the UK dies without the care and support they need at the end of life to make it comfortable.
But so that's the issue is pain leave, though, Ambi. That's, I mean, we haven't.
But isn't that the issue that if you are feeling if your sisters and your husband and all those people could have had a pain-free, peaceful end of life, would you need the assisted dying law?
They tried to give her things to reduce the pain, but it didn't, and she was screaming in the night. And I just think we should have compassion for people to have a choice. So the lady who feeds the birds doesn't want to go. My sisters did. Maybe they should be allowed. You know, is it horses for courses? It's not a blanket euthanasia.
No.
It's for people to have a choice about the end of their life.
And what I think is incredible is that
If
we're
they're in
talking about
pain.
it in this
Yes.
way.
And that's
because
good.
for many
And that's
years
good.
it's been a taboo
Yes.
subject, hasn't it?
And that's why the hospice movement struggles so much,
Yeah.
which receives very little funding from the government. You'll rarely find a family leave a hospice where one of their loved ones has died who has anything bad to say about the care they've received. They're full of
Hospices are
praise.
remarkable places.
We should have more hospices. We should be putting more money into palliative care. We should be talking more about how, in a civilised society, we prioritise people when they're coming to the end of their life, that we invest funds in ensuring that everybody dies a pain-free
Nadine, if only you were an MP and you could try and make these things happen. It's lovely to have you
Those
both
days are
here.
gone.
Thank you for
And you were
sharing
very
your
good on
thoughts.
Strictly Come Dancing.
You were
very good.
You were amazing.
Yes.
You're both were brilliant.
Lots of you getting in
much.
touch. Joe says, I cared for both my parents through dementia together. The end stages were horrific. They literally wasted away and died a starving, painful death. All I could do was watch them. I know both my parents would have not wanted to go like that. I totally support assisted dying. I don't want my children to go through this. Brian says, in March last year, I was diagnosed with MND. I want the option of deciding when the time is right for me to end what is going to be a truly long, lingering death. My family is OK with my wishes, but it is case by case.
And the argument
And you
is
think of
shouldn't have
somebody
to
with
go
motor
abroad for
neurons
it.
on tubes everywhere and they have no choice.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? It's a sensitive subject.
It is, and if you have been affected by the issues we've been discussing there, you can find advice and support at itvcom.com/helplines. Thank you to both of you.
Thank you for
really
coming.
important
Thank you.
conversation.